kind of point lies with the music director. But then there is a certain reticence at saying to a conductor, what you just did there wasn't helpful to us, or we need a little more here. Some conductors, of course, you feel safe talking that way to. I've seen this myself, watching rehearsals. The Pittsburgh Symphony with the Tortelier a season or two ago. That was amazingly collegial. But again, it's not necessarily the rule.
Right. It does happen, but not always.
So I saw you once at one of the twice-a-year convenings, to use the currently fashionable term, of the Mellon Foundation Orchestra Forum. You were representing your orchestra. I was there in my role as a fellow of the program. And I saw you work with another one of the fellows, Liz Lehrman, a choreographer, on a very extraordinary session in which you and a group of other musicians learned how to give and take feedback. Can you say something about that?
Sure. That's Liz Lehrman has developed a process called critical response process, which leaves the artist in control of the process. So it never has the opportunity to go away from the artist's control, and therefore it leaves the artist feeling safe. One of the primary advantages of that is the first step in this process is in the spirit of goodwill, is a statement of meaning. And this is something that we as musicians often omit. We tell people what's wrong. We don't tell people what's right. And without knowing what's right, how can you know what to encourage and create more of in a performance and make something strong and compelling? So this is the first step. And then in the second step, the artist asks the questions, and the responders can only respond to that question.
But I think we should set the scene a little bit. I was present for some of this. I watched it myself. And what people have to imagine is that you were sitting there with, if I remember rightly, an E-flat clarinet. You were playing a Stravinsky solo from which piece was it?
Rite of Spring.
From Rite of Spring. And you were surrounded literally by a circle of colleagues from your own, perhaps, and other orchestras.
That's correct.
All of whom were now going to comment on how you played it.
Right.
Exposing, to say the least.
Exposing, yeah. But my purpose in being there was not to do a performance, nor was it to prove how well I could play. I was doing this so I could get information on how I could play better. I was changing some equipment and wanted some feedback before I went into the actual...
So it was more than simply an experimental situation. You really did want some help.
Absolutely.
With how you were playing this.
And that was on our subscription concert at the end of the week.
I didn't realize that part.
Yes.
And so was it helpful?
Yes, it was extremely helpful. And some of my questions were answered in that first step. Was I playing in a way that made the one solo sound like a serpent? And I didn't even have to raise that question because it was stated to me, which said even more to me that I could do. I was getting my interpretation across. I was creating something, not just playing the notes.
And this became possible because, number one, you have a program of many years standing where people come twice a year, and they know that it's a protected environment, and a lot of free-ranging conversations will happen. And then maybe above all, you have Liz, who is a wonder and a marvel at creating a sense of safety and constructive attitude.
And our particular group from St. Louis had been very interested in bringing this technique to our orchestra. And that had partially to do with why I volunteered to do this, so I could take back the experience and not merely a description.
Because to state in a way what's obvious, I guess, if you had questions about the way you were playing that solo, and who is not going to have questions very often about what you're doing when it's something that important, there was no real place you could take it within the orchestra unless you had a particular friend, I'm guessing, that you could just go off and play it for. So then after this, did you and the others from the orchestra find that this was something that could take root at all within the institution? Really?
Yes.
Huh.
We took it back. We had Liz come. We had some of her associates come. We even formed an ongoing group that met, and we would play for each other. One of the wonderful things about this particular method isn't just how you play, anything you make. So when, as chairman of the media committee, I was producing a newsletter, I put the first prototype of the newsletter in front of the critical response group, and they made suggestions. They made suggestions so it was a better piece of work when it went out to the body of musicians. And it's been extremely helpful. And it also, it involves some great conversational techniques. The ability to dialogue, the ability to listen, the ability to answer only the question that's been asked, to ask permission before you give an opinion about something that someone might not want.
Because I think it's something that you've said to me in the past, that these are not necessarily skills that orchestra musicians come to an orchestra having,
Correct.
Which is no criticism of them. They have never been asked to develop them. They have never been told that that was going to be important in their work.
That's correct.
But in the new climate, it seems to be very important.
I think after you get to the point where you can play your instrument and you can do, hopefully, whatever you can imagine, you can create on your instrument. That's the point at which the other skills, the other life skills of who you are, become a part of what you create in the music you create.
Right. Although, of course, if you want to go by the traditional model and you just sit there waiting for the conductor to impress you enough to make you play better than normal, then you don't have to worry about that.
No, but it's probably not going to be very exciting or original.
No, and when I talk about the new climate, it seems like in the orchestra world, a lot of old things that have been done for a long time don't work. And the immediate sign of that is financial trouble. Trouble in selling tickets, trouble in raising money. But that leads to questions, if one really wants to talk about it in the deepest way, about what kind of an institution this is, or even why should anybody pay attention. So then you end up rethinking all kinds of things that people do, including the purely human relationships among the musicians, which again, click on the link I draw in the air and go to Fergus's interview for a minute to see what a difference it can make, in his opinion anyway, in the playing. But now I know, Tina, that you have had specialized training in some of these communication skills. You took it that seriously.
Yes, I've become a certified instructor in 6 thinking hats.
Right.
And this is a system of thinking which has enabled me to be a far more effective committee person and to look at an issue and actually devise a way out of it without getting stuck in all the things that can possibly go wrong.
Right. It's, as I understand it, I had some exposure to it, I guess, the same way you originally did, through the Mellon Forum. It's one of many things that have surfaced really in the business world as
Correct.
Ways that people in business can learn to communicate more effectively to each other and manage their work with each other better. And it certainly is a way to make you aware of exactly what sort of contribution to the discussion you're making at any moment.
One of the things that goes on in a sort of everyday back and forth is you might bring up an idea that you think is wonderful. And the first thing